Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Super Tuesday, and welcome back to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the Ray Esports Racing League. My name is Ron Mullins, with you all season long here. Joining me in the virtual commentary booth, as he will hopefully for the rest of the season, is Charles Bichelle, with our old friend Josh Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler. Tonight, we bring you the action from the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway, the Roval layout, using that fantastic final banked corner. I believe that's turns 3 and 4. For NASCAR here, it will be the final corners for this race tonight. The drivers will be tackling this course here, which I think will put in some very good racing. We've got two classes running here tonight, and first up is the MX-5s. Now, the MX-5s put on a pretty good race last time out at Lime Rock Park. Had some pretty good racing action all throughout that race, had some train action as well as a pretty big pile-up to start the race. Had thinned out the herd quite a lot towards the very beginning, but it was definitely a chaotic race, but definitely a fun one as well. Tonight, we're racing at much more of an unknown quantity of a track than Lime Rock Park, so we'll all be learning this conversation as this evening moves along. We'll be having a conversation here with my co-anchor Charles Bichelle here, but we'll definitely be learning about this combination here throughout tonight's broadcast. Now, Charles, just to bring you in here real quick, this track is a little bit of a unknown quantity for this series. We haven't run here in quite some time, so what are your thoughts heading into tonight's races?
Well, you know, you're right, and thanks for that intro, Ron. It's a little bit of an unknown quantity because, well, as far as Ray Esports is concerned, but I have seen this, and there are several of the drivers out here who run the Weekend Warrior Series in the Spec Racers and in the Formula 4s, and we were actually here, I think, 2 seasons ago in the Spec Racer, so they're at least familiar with the layout. Obviously, these Rovals, it's a lot like, you know, we'll pick its big brother, Daytona, is a NASCAR oval track converted to a road course configuration. So, you know, we'll have some trouble spots that we'll have to talk about along the way, especially turn 1. Pit entry and exit are a little difficult here, and I'm sure we'll go over that as well. But it should be a fun race. We got a nice grid, and yeah, so, you know, anytime you get to a track that's a little used, there's always the potential for some big pileups. But, you know, we got some good strong MX-5s that we're going to run tonight, so I think we'll be okay.
We've definitely got some strong MX-5s, a really good field of 21 cars here that'll be running tonight. We're currently in, I believe let me take a look at my live timing screen right now. We are in qualifying now, about halfway through it as we stand currently. You can see I'm not sure if that was a glitch on my end. That was some very hard steering lock there from Joaquin Effinger. We're following him in the number 700 car there, coming through the first series of corners. Now that first series of corners is really, really tricky from my experience here. I think that first corner, when you're going off the high banks and going into the infield, that is going to be really, really fast. That's, well, the fastest part of the track there. And it's really likely, it's like you're threading the eye of the needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket. That's basically the best way I can describe it. Thankfully, with these Spec Racer Fords and the MX-5s, they are going a little bit slower there, but with these MX-5s and the Spec Racer Fords, which have really no aerodynamic grip to speak of, you really have to rely on that mechanical grip, and going through that corner, you're on the razor's edge of grip, and you have to be picture perfect to go through that corner well. So I think that'll definitely be a corner that catches out some of these drivers. So Charles, what do you think are some other trouble spots that these drivers are going to have to deal with all throughout tonight's race?
We're basically running 2/3 of the oval, and with a few corners in between. So I think the tricky spots are going to be, as you said, turn one. It's about managing your speed and momentum through there. You need to brake a little bit to make the corner, but you don't want to bleed too much speed off. In this configuration of the road course, the pit entry is not as bad. But pit exit is very treacherous. We won't have to hopefully worry about that tonight since it's a very short race. But if we do have any cars that have to go and take fast repairs, they're going to have to be very careful coming out, because you're coming out almost right into the racing line at the exit of turn one. So you need to be very careful there. And yeah, it's just about, this is a track that's pretty open. There's lots of room to race, and it's just about maintaining your momentum and trying to keep the car going as hard as you can go for 20 minutes.
Speaking of momentum, I can imagine throughout this race, bump drafting is going to play a massive role when it comes time to going down that very long back straightaway, the very long front straightaway as well, and going through that very long, it feels forever in these somewhat slower cars. I'm sure in a NASCAR and definitely in an Indy car, it doesn't feel very long coming through these long bank corners, but in these cars, it's going to feel like forever there. These drivers are going to spend a vast majority of this lap, I believe, on full throttle. So really, the draft is going to play a massive role with these MX-5s, which of course have a massive, really, slipstream effects, and that will be something that comes into play when it comes time for the race. But it's coming into play for qualifying right now. It looks like very good for Huffman there. You can see him at the top of the timing order right now at a 1 minute 30.4. That's a very good lap for him, about a second clear of Josh Justice in P2. So very spread out front row as it stands at the moment, but we still have about 5 minutes left in this qualifying session, and anything can happen, especially if you get a very good tow. I think a lot of these drivers will definitely be looking to improve their lap times with how big the slipstream effect will have on their performance.
For both races tonight. So you talked about the Mazda just making a big hole in the air and getting that good tow around the oval section, which I think, based on the fact that Huffman has got an 0.8 of a second advantage, I'm going to say he had a pretty good draft for most of that lap. And the same thing with the Spec Racers. You'll see the Spec Racers bump drafting also. They're obviously not as quick as the Mazdas, and they'll just basically link up, and you may see them 3 and 4 chain together for the first couple of laps of the race until they kind of work themselves out.
One issue that the Spec Racer 4 drivers may face if they want to bump draft could be the damage, because we do have damage enabled for these races, and with that very small, really, it's a mailbox opening for the radiators for the Spec Racer Fords. That might be a issue later on. We'll see some drivers possibly take a little bit careful. You can see a massive train of cars there entering the brakes, going hard on the brakes, trying to get woed up for turn 2 there. This is a very tight, probably the slowest section on this entire circuit here, just trying to claw through with the downhill section here. It's great to have a roval with a lot of elevation change. Usually you expect rovals to just be flat as a pancake, really. For a lot of them, they are. But when it comes to tracks like a little bit of Daytona, well, Daytona doesn't really have a lot of elevation change. Certainly Charlotte does, and this track does as well. It's nice to have just a little bit of elevation change. It adds a little bit of flair to this race, and it'll definitely we'll see a lot of drivers maybe trying to battle side-by-side coming through that section. That may hurt them a lot, so we may see drivers battling hard through there and really dragging themselves down like they're carrying an anvil because they're battling so hard. We'll just have to wait and see. So we're in the final stages of the qualifying qualifying session right now. We are following this massive pack here of all these drivers, and looks like it's going to be the number 13 car getting the real benefit of the slipstream. He is going to be at the tail end of that 3-car pack there, trying to get as much slipstream as he possibly can in that very long run to try and take the start-finish line here in a few moments' time. It's looking good for Huffman. We'll just have to wait and see, but yeah, we'll just see if anyone can really counter his time. It's looking very good for him right now.
Yeah, you have to be very careful also, because if you bump draft in qualifying, you'll get a 0x, which will invalidate your time. So you have to be, you have to be close, but not too close. You probably want to be 2 or 3 tenths back when you start that run, so you can get that overspeed and maybe make a move to the outside on the top of the banking, and just carry more of that in as you're working your way through. So yeah, it's been a really good lap for Huffman. But I think we'll see. I don't think this is the way the qualifying will finish. I think you'll see a couple other cars move around, maybe tighten that gap up just a bit.
Well, he certainly seems very confident in his lap time. I don't believe he has rejoined the track to try and improve his time. So Jamison Huffman, who is really the star of the show when it came to the Long Beach, not Long Beach, what am I saying? The Lime Rock Park round 1 week ago, he absolutely dominated not only the MX-5 race that night, he also dominated the Formula cars, which will be returning in a few weeks' time here on Apex Racing TV. But for now, he just absolutely kicked everyone's butts when it came to the racing action last week. So I think he will try and continue that dominance. I'm not sure if we can get championship standings here. I'm not too sure. We didn't ask our producer Josh if we had the other championship standings available. I think we might be, and I think we might be getting them here soon. It was a very good start to the year for Jamison Huffman, but I don't believe he showed up at the opening part of the year. So you can see this is, I believe, is this possibly outdated, because I see my old buddy Morgan Burkhardt, who you can see in 8th, who's actually going to be running an IMSA this season. So shout out to him. He's a valued member, a friend of mine that I've known for many, many moons. I sold him my first ever kart back in 2016. So to see him moving up into the world of IMSA and having a lot of success in the world of sports cars really adds a nice little twinkle to my eye here. But he did a very good job last season, really kicked butt in the first few races of the season, then deputized to me in my absence last season. But I think hopefully, fingers crossed, for the next broadcast of this series in 1 week's time at Summit Point, we'll be able to have the championship standings available for you for this season. But right now, the checkered flag is out in the qualifying session. It's looking very good for Jamison Huffman, as it has throughout most of the session, as Josh Justice, I believe, is still out on track, but I don't believe he is improving his lap time. So it's looking very good that Jamison Huffman is going to grab the pole for the MX-5 race.
Yeah, I got to talk to Morgan a couple of times last season as I did some fill-in work or season before last. Yeah, great driver, sim racer. And it's great to see him carry on his professional racing career, and that's just obviously fantastic to get up to the IMSA series, any of the IMSA series. So it's a big achievement.
I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not biased when it comes to supporting Morgan. I'm definitely not biased when it comes to supporting Morgan. Definitely not, because I was technically his first ever driving coach. I remember on his second run in my kart when he was just taking that thing for a test drive at a DC Autocross back at FedEx Field back at the later stage of 2016. I pretty much said in my very young squeaker voice back then, "You can take this corner flat out if you want to." And he just kind of like nodded at me in the helmet. He didn't say anything, and then he went through that corner flat out and picked up, I think, like 5 seconds on his second run there. So I can definitely go into the history books if he goes to do great things in the world of motorsports, which I think he might be able to do. I can add myself into the history books as being his first driving coach. But as you can see from this very strange interpretation of track limits there from the number 99, the qualifying session has wrapped up. I believe we'll be getting our starting grid here soon. That's looking very good for your driver at the pole, Jamison Huffman.
Yeah, fantastic time. His time stuck. You didn't see really any major moves in the grid, so he'll be on pole, and so it'll be up to Justice and Overstreet, Brewster and company to see if they can work together and maybe track him down.
I think we're going to get the starting grid here soon. I believe we might have some more drivers just on track finishing up their lap time. So after that, we'll be able to get the starting grid here for the MX-5 race. The second time that we've seen the MX-5 so far this season. I believe we'll be getting the starting grid here in just a few moments' time. So it's going to be Jamison Huffman starting again where he finished off at Lime Rock Park, grabbing the pole position, really his third in the row from the Ray Esports Series. He will be starting this race on the pole, and then joining him alongside is Josh Justice, that gap being about 0.8 of a second between those two, fairly large compared to what we usually expect from this series. Megan Overstreet will be starting this race in P3 with Jim Brewster in P4. Brad Gold will be starting this race in 5th, about 1 second back of your pole man tonight, with Bryce Evans starting in P6. Lewis Lockshine in P7. Remy L'Esperance, I apologize if I absolutely butchered that pronunciation. He will be starting this race in the number 13 car in the 8th position. Andrew Wozencroft will be in 9th, with John Wilson rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, we got on row 6, we've got 2 actual professional racers. MX5 Cup racer Celine Rollin is in P11, and Formula V racer Brandon Abbott's in P12. Along with Stephen Blevin and Seth Spolman on row 7. Rich Green and Charlie Vaccaro make up row 8. League organizer Stevie Ray and Joaquin Effinger on 17th and 18th. Wayne Buttermore, Trenton Kramer rounds out your top 20, and Richard Franco shotguns the field in P21.
Could make fun of Stevie Ray for qualifying down 17th, but I don't want to get yelled at because he's been very nice to me, and I don't want to ruin my reputation with him. So the drivers will be starting their formation lap soon. We're going to keep our eye on the Porsche pace car. Yeah, you can see the Porsche pace car. Right as I said that timed out beautifully. He is already moving and starting these drivers off in this full pace lap here. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait here between now and the start of the race. I think. I'll ask you this quick question before we get into the ad read here for tonight's race. Charles, do you think this race is going to be a little bit hectic, or do you think these drivers are going to take a more methodical approach when it comes to this MX-5 race?
I think it's going to be more methodical just because this is not a track that we run very often. So I think the unknown of trying to race this track is probably going to make people a little more cautious, at least for the lap or two. So obviously with a short race, you can't take too much time.
Yeah, certainly rings true. We don't have the most amount of time here for this race, only 20 minutes for these drivers to negotiate, but we still have time between now and the start to talk about one of the proud partners of this series, and that is Grassroots Motorsports. Built for true sports car enthusiasts, Grassroots Motorsports has one mission: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it's online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print or in person, the racers and builders and the car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports take you behind the scenes to show you how to make your car better. Along the way, they'll give you a taste of everything this wonderful hobby that we all love and share has to offer, from 1,000 horsepower track monsters to cool street cars built in driveways. They also have they maintain a collection of staff-built project cars, because obviously hands-on technical articles aren't typed behind a desk, they're scribbled down in the garage. To not only read but be a part of the story, head on over to grassrootsmotorsports.com. Grassroots Motorsports is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League. I managed to get that before they rejoined the Oval. I think that might be a new record from me, but as I said, they are making the hard turn. That's going to be a pretty good overtaking opportunity, I think, for this race. That hairpin, but we might see some drivers be a little bit more cautious when it comes to that corner, because you don't want to sacrifice your line going onto this back straightaway, going onto the oval, and having that very long run flat out, where if you lose any sort of momentum coming out of that final corner, you're going to be in for a world of hurt, especially if you have cars right behind you. So we'll see if these drivers take it easy through there, or maybe try and go for some moves. We'll definitely have to wait and see how things transpire in this race. But now we wait for the 1,000-year wait for these drivers to negotiate the final corner here. It feels like forever in the MX-5 cars. It's a little bit funny. It's a little bit goofy seeing these tiny little MX-5 Cup cars on a track where you usually see NASCARs running at. So it's a little bit cute to see these tiny little plucky sports cars running here. But despite these cars being tiny, they still put on some big races here and a lot of big action from start to finish. I believe we'll be getting the start here soon. Taking a look, the green flag is out and the drivers are on their way. We're going to see who gets the best start. I believe Jamison Huffman has a good start there, but you can see Megan Overstreet is actually running pretty decent there. there. Looks like, ooh, I thought she was going to maybe try and sneak a wheel down the inside there going into the first corner, but you can see drivers making it through clean so far. You can see some 3-wide action there entering turn 2. I believe they've all gone through clean thus far up towards the front. You can see some shuffling there. I believe Jamison Huffman held out Josh Justice to dry there. You can see a little bit of contact there involving Megan Overstreet. Oh, you can see even more contact right behind them. You can see a spinning MX-5 spinning wildly out of control. You can see those drivers were incredibly close to each other, so there might be some hand gestures there, just voicing their displeasure with each other with hand signals. But besides the small little contact there with Megan Overstreet and the small little scuffle there right behind them, it's so far so clean.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Overstreet had a little net code and just kind of pushed her car out, but she was able to collect it up. It cost her, obviously she was challenging for P2 at that point in time, so she dropped a spot. But yeah, then you get the little spin behind and nowhere for the car behind to go. But they managed to get the cars righted, and they're back out on track. And we see the first little dive to the inside there in that final corner before we get on the oval.
Ooh, I think that may not be the smartest move in the world, because I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that was the number 82 car that we were following there. That was the number 82, just looking at my live timing screen. That was actually, no, I believe that was a 42 of Seth Spolman. My apologies. So he was the one that was a little bit hung out to dry there, so he might be within striking distance of getting overtaken. Here's a driver that's in striking distance. That's Megan Overstreet there. You can see, ooh, Josh Justice getting a move put on him there by Jim Brewster going down the inside into the first corner. That's a very bold move, but he manages to stick it there going into turn 2, so you can book that move done for him. But I think he might lose another spot here, Josh Justice will, as Megan Overstreet is feeling really racy once again. We'll see if there's a little bit more of netcode contact here coming into the very tight, probably one of the slowest corners on this whole track there. So we saw a little bit of argy-bargy action there on lap 1. I believe we might get a replay to see some of the argy-bargy action that was going on there. I believe this is the fight that was going on farther behind the field. We were following. Yeah, you can see there the close racing involving Bryce Evans and a little bit of contact there with, I believe that's the number 97, and you can see them bumping into each other. Ooh, a little bit of, I think, a driver there, I'm not sure what number that was, actually clipped the stop number 97 there, so I think might be a little bit of damage on one of these MX-5s, so we might have to play Where's Waldo to try and spot the front end damage on one of these cars. But yeah, very clean start throughout most of the field, but for some of those drivers that are involved in incidents farther behind, it is a nightmare scenario for them early on.
Yeah, Bryce Evans obviously just, I think he was not the real instigator there, and maybe just got caught up. But yeah, you go 2 wide into that corner, and they were actually 3 wide, and there's room, but there's not a lot of room as we see the front end damage. Is that the car behind John Wilson, so that's probably Wilson Croft, number 80. He's already kind of dented the front end, and so, we see the 3 wide down the front straight, makes this run into turn 1. Ooh, nice move to the inside there. Was that the 444 car, Kramer?
Ooh,
that was
yeah,
nice.
That was a very smooth move, and he's going to get another position as well. As you can see, that I believe that was Blethen there that went off as well, along with Wozencroft, who went wildly out of control going through the grass and the gravel. But you can see that was a fantastic move there from Trent Kramer. We're going to take a look at a very early replay just to see that move, because that was awesome to watch here coming into the first corner. He really comes out of nowhere, cuts it deep there, late apexed by a mile, and then goes into that corner, and you can see a little bit of an overshoot there from Blethen, I believe. He goes for a nice little meandering trip through the grass there, but a beautiful move there from Trent Kramer. Usually we get highlights from these Apex Racing TV broadcasts to share on the late Apex. If you want to tune into that, you can tune here on Apex Racing TV to hear about the world of sim racing at 5 p.m. on Fridays. That's always a good show to tune in here after the racing action on Friday nights here on Apex Racing TV. We usually send in our highlights. That might be the highlight we take from this race, because that was a fantastic move there, perfectly executed and fairly smoothly done as well.
Absolutely, yeah. When you get 2 cars in front battling into a corner, obviously both cars are going to slow down. And he said, they look like they're going wide. I'm just going to sneak to the inside, and was able to pick that and carried his momentum up, and able to pick up another spot after that. So great line through there, and great driving by Kramer.
Ooh, I think that was a very aggressive move there from Josh Justice. Oh my God, he's going to try and get the move done here coming into turn 2. Very close. I think they might have made a little bit of contact there coming through turn 2. The little switchback there, that Jamison Huffman is trying to pull off there, and you can see Megan Overstreet is now trying to slip her way through, and she manages to gain that spot there. So Josh Justice, it was a pretty good, that was a very aggressive move there, and if that worked, that would have been a beautiful move for him, but sadly it didn't work out too well for him, as he's now dropped down to P3 and is in the crutches. You can see this massive pack of MX-5s. That has 7 cars that he can cover all within a blanket. You can see top 7 covered by 2.1 seconds. Currently Roland there, who's actually gained up a few positions there. I'm taking a look at my live timing screen to see where exactly how many positions he's gained so far. Up 4 so far, but actually Trent Kramer right behind him, currently running in P8. You can see he's a little bit away from this pack. He's up 12 spots, so that's a fantastic start from him. Certainly helped from that fantastic move that he pulled off a few laps ago. So a lot of drivers clawing their way through the field quite nicely so far. Meanwhile, up towards the front, it's fairly locked tight and shut for now. I think definitely at this stage of the race, really in the midpoint of this race, after the 5-minute mark and before you reach the minute 15 mark, I think we'll see a lot of these drivers, taking it easy, just whittling the laps away. Actually, I say that we might see some 3-wide action here going down the start-finish straightaway. You can see we're following, riding on board with Josh Justice here, going down the start-finish straightaway, giving Megan Overstreet the boot scoon boogie there, doing a little bit of bump drafting, going into the first corner there to push her ahead and retake the lead of the race. But you can see it's not over yet. Jamison Huffman was down but not out, as he managed to claw that move once again there on. Ooh, you can see, never mind, you can see the battling hard going on with, oh my god, that was a beautiful move there from the number 13 to actually move up and overtake Josh Justice there. So he's now moved up into P3. That was a brilliant move from him. He really came out of nowhere. He's up 5 spots now, as Roland is up 7. So a lot of these drivers making a lot of moves here in the last few moments.
Yeah, did I mention earlier that he's an actual MX-5 Cup racer in real life?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So I think that could
explain it.
Bit. Yeah, I think that's starting to show a little bit. So, if he can get back up to these front 2 cars, we may have us a nice race for the final half of this. But yeah, it was a great job by Justice to just, NASCAR Overstreet up to the front with the bump draft. But I don't think he really could. I don't think he really could control the car in the braking with that overspeed, and just kind of lost, a couple of seconds just trying to get the car gathered back up. So that was, there's already been some really good passing and racing up front, and I don't think it's over quite yet. I think we're going to see a few more of that before this is all said and done.
I think right now, actually, I was going to say that we might see some teamwork here, but you can see right now, Jamison Huffman and Megan Overstreet going side by side once again, going down the start-finish straightaway, and now Huffman has managed to reclaw that position there. But what I was going to say is we might see a little bit of teamwork form farther behind just to try and close that gap up. But with them going side by side, Jamison Huffman and Megan Overstreet, the gap between P2 and P3 has dropped down quite significantly. You can see some hard battling here outside the top 10. We're following Charlie Vaccaro at the front of this fight right now, and he managed to claw from some positions there. You can see Andrew Wozencroft, that just got the move done with that damaged front end on that MX-5. Lots of hard battling all throughout the field, but Charlie Vaccaro loses it. Goes for an excursion through the grass there. I believe he just barely kept it out of the tire barriers. Very lucky for him to escape that without any major damage. Certainly probably some damage to his underwear after a moment like that. Coming out of turn 3, we're getting a replay here. Following Charlie Vaccaro here, we're riding on board with him. Coming into the corner, maybe a little bit of curb, maybe just a little bit of snap-on oversteer. Ooh, yeah, that was...
I think that's exactly what it was. I think it was just a little oversteered, trying to get back on throttle, and lost the rear, and obviously he went from the front of that pack to the back, and so now he's got a little bit of work to do to try to claw that time back. But we still got 11 minutes left in the race, so there's, like I said, I think there's going to be more things pop up before this race is all over with.
Yeah, we definitely still have plenty of time between now and the checkered flag, and I think we'll see plenty of battling here up towards the front. You can see the massive run that Roland has. He might be able to take the lead here coming around the outside of turn 1. Will he be able to pull it off there? He managed to get the move done on Megan Overstreet, but isn't close enough there to get the move done on Huffman for now, but he manages to get it done going into the brakes for turn 2. That was a brilliant move there from Roland. Nice. He came out of absolutely nowhere from that. The gap was like about a half a second as he went onto the oval, but he managed to get it done. He just kept his foot wide open on the throttle. He managed to get it done. That is a brilliant move there. We've seen a lot of drivers using the slipstream to absolute perfection. I think Roland just mastered it right there.
Absolutely, yeah. If you want a visual, if you want to see something visual about how aerodynamics work, that his run down the straightaway is the prime example of it. He just carried probably another 10 to 15 kilometers per hour of speed down there, and hung it out on the outside. Was able to hold the car and make the pass over both Overstreet and Huffman.
Ooh, speaking of some hard battling here, you can see Wayne Buttermore was going for some very audacious moves there. I think he was trying to get the move done on gold there coming into the hairpin, but wasn't close enough. But that was just pulled off to absolute perfection. I gotta imagine with the closing rates, it had to be probably well over 10 miles an hour faster going down that start-finish straightaway that Roland was there. He's actually pulled a fairly sizable gap now. You can see about 0.4 of a second separating him and Huffman right now, but you can see some three-wide action here right towards the tail end of the top 15. Wayne Buttermore there is going to be in the middle of it. Meanwhile, we have some action here at the front of the field. You can see Huffman trying to pull off the threading the needle there. I believe Roland might have been a strategic call there, possibly to just let the both of them by. Maybe he had some kind of slowdown. Not sure what in the world happened there.
I think strategic is probably the right answer to that. You as soon as you said 0.4, I looked at the timing and scoring, and by the time I got my eyes over to it, it was 1/10. So you just kind of, what's his contact right there?
Ooh. Oh, that's going to be a big impact. Oh, my God. Charlie Vaccaro just saw his life flash before his very own eyes. I believe that was, I think that was Evans, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Actually, no, that was Effinger, I believe. Yeah. Effinger, yeah. My apologies there. That was Effinger there just barreling through, going what looked like twice the speed of sound. We're going to replay here to see him going into turn one here. Definitely a little bit of contact there. And we're going to see it here. Yeah, just a little bit of contact. That's a very single file corner. And oh my God, that was mere feet separating Charlie Vaccaro from an absolutely brutal takedown in this race. But that is not a corner where you expect to see some side-by-side action. As I mentioned towards the start of this broadcast, going through that corner in any sort of car, it's like threading the eye of the needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket. And sadly, those two drivers proved that usually it takes two to tango, but when it comes to turn one here at Homestead, that's definitely not the case. But it looks like these three drivers are going to try and do some kind of weird salsa dance here coming into turn one. You can see they're rolling around the outside. Is he going to try and pull off the move that he did on Huffman once again to get the move done? I believe he did. He cleared him well before the braking zone. This time around, just carry the momentum around the outside to get the move done there on Huffman. Meanwhile, Megan Overstreet, I kind of imagine at this stage of the race, she's feeling a little bit annoyed, you could possibly say. I mean, she's put together a very good race so far, as I believe we might have just lost 13 there. Not sure what in the world happened to him. L'Esperance, I apologize if I butcher that pronunciation yet again. I believe he might have had some kind of connection issue, which would be a shame. He was running in a very good position, but sadly for him, I think, yeah, that does not look like it's just a quick little blink out. I believe he might have just disconnected from the session. A shame, a driver that I don't recognize from this series, but he was putting together a very good drive, running firmly in the top 10, well, running firmly in the top 5 as well. But sadly for him, it looks like his race is going to end about 5 minutes too early.
Yeah, it is a shame. You hate to just have the disconnects like that. But I will say this: I've talked with Megan Overstreet a bit, because she is a Weekend Warriors driver, and she's absolutely loving this. She's having a ball. So I'm sure she's saying, "Oh, I don't have the speed to just kind of run away from them." But I'm sure she's thinking, "All right, how do I play the strategy?" And she goes, "Well, I'm just going to go through the middle, 3 wide."
And she managed to make it work. That is a brilliant move there from Megan Overstreet. And look, you can see very close to contact there with Roland there. And I believe Josh Justice clawed into that fight there a little bit. You can see the gap is actually decreased. You can see basically bumper to bumper. Those drivers were running 1-2 for quite a long ways. But right now, Jameson Huffman and Josh Justice currently running P3 and P4, trying to battle for that final podium position there. We'll see how that battle develops between now and the checkered flag. But that was a brilliant move there from Megan Overstreet, just to thread the middle and go 3 wide there. That was a nicely played off move there. But I think we have round 2 here with Joaquin Effinger here going into turn number 1 with the same driver that he came to blows with last time by. It doesn't end in tears, unlike the incident they had there a few moments ago. But you can see some nice tussling there between those two. I believe that is Ullman, if I'm not mistaken, that's at the front of this trio here that is, I wouldn't say holding them up right now, but he hasn't had the best of races in the world. Taking a look at my live timing screen, he is running in P16. You can see now Rich Green has pulled into the pits. Not sure what happened here. Maybe a little bit of damage, maybe some kind of penalty here. I think might have been some kind of damage there. You don't usually pit in these races, but unfortunately the driver, the number 12 car, actually just disconnected. I think he's decided for the final 5 minutes of the race, he's just going to sit back, relax, and have a nice beer.
There you go. Yeah, he definitely has some front end damage. It was more than what we would see normally in bump drafting. There was definitely some aero deficiencies in that car, as we see this battle still continuing up here in the front between Roland, Huffman, and Overstreet.
Ooh! That was hard contact. I think that was I definitely saw the bumper there of Roland's car dip there. I'm not sure if there was some kind of glitch on my end, but that was definitely a little bit of contact there, and thankfully for those two, they managed to escape without incident for now. But I think if they battle as hard as they are, these two drivers that we were just following there with Jim Brewster and Lockshine, I think they might get involved in that fight. That I think will be something that we have to keep our eyes on. They're still fairly close with this fight, but I think if Roland and Huffman make any more contact and they check up the drivers further behind, I think this 4-car race might turn into a 6-car race between now and the checkered flag. We don't have much more time left in this race. We're 16 and a half minutes in to this 20-minute affair, but I think there's still a lot to be decided.
Oh yeah, this is not over with yet. Yeah, you're right. As long as these cars up front keep battling, they're going side by side through the corners. It just keeps all those cars in back that have that nice draft. Just keeps them in check. It keeps them in touch with the leaders. And then, anything can happen. As we see, looks like there's a bit of damage on the left front there for Huffman. See, definitely looks like there's a crack there in between the hood and the left front fender.
That is... Ooh, you can see some bump drafting there. Got a beautiful view of the engine bay of that MX-5 there, but I think... You could describe it as a crack, you could describe it as a crevice, whatever it is, it's definitely something for sure.
It doesn't do a lot for his aerodynamics, I will say that. So he's probably fine, being behind somebody. As you can see, as long as he's staying in the draft, it's not exposed. But if he gets back out front, we see spins. I see smoke in the background back there.
Ooh, not good for Stephen Blethyn. He was the driver that went off there a few moments ago, and he goes off yet again there and hits the wall second time around. I think that might be... Actually, no, he is, I think, going to drive it back to the pits with a very wounded MX-5. We're going to replay here to see what happened to him in the first few corners here. Coming into turn 3, maybe a little bit of contact, maybe just going a little bit wide here. See what happens. Oh no, just a simple little spin there. Ooh, a little bit of contact that dislodged his bumper there. The other track marshals will probably be very quick to pick up that piece of broken MX-5 and try and sell it on eBay or try and sell it as scrap metal.
For sure, absolutely. Or scrap plastic, I think in this case maybe. But yeah, so yeah, it just wasn't a big hit. But obviously, you're talking about these cars. They're designed to be lightweight. So they've got some protection, but it's more about the roll cage than it is about all these metal skirts on the outside.
Yeah, I will say one thing about these cars, it always lends itself to some good racing. You can see that here. Oh my God, that was a brilliant move there from Josh Justice to get his way around Megan Overstreet, but you can see a little bit wide there was Roland there coming through turn 2, went onto the grass a little bit, but he still managed to hold on to that lead, but just barely. I think, well, from the driver that runs in the MX-5s in real life, maybe we might see some mind games develop here. I think he's very confident in his race car. I mean, he wouldn't be confident if he wouldn't be confident if he didn't manage to claw his way up through the field as well as he has, up 10 positions between the start and the finish so far. So he's put together a very good race, so it's pretty obvious that he's very confident in that MX-5 race car of his. So I think he'll just trying to hold on now between now and the checkered flag. I believe we might be taking the white flag this time by. If I'm not mistaken, we actually could be running a little bit late and could be taking the checkered this time by. But I think either way, a very good drive from Roland. I believe with the position they are on track, I'm taking a look. I'm keeping one eye on this fight here between Huffman and Roland. You can see them NASCAR style bump drafting going onto the oval here, going down the back straight here, going into the into the bank corner. We're going to see if these drivers can try and pull off any sort of miracle. You can see the time is ticking away here. You can see we're going to hit the 20-minute mark in 3, 2, 1, and that is the time at for this race. You can see now Josh Justice is clawing his way through the field. He's going to be on the apron here trying to get a move done at the last stage of the race.
Wow.
I believe that was a checkered flag, and he managed to get it done.
Move.
Just barely, less than a tenth of a second, covering all 3 of those drivers. That was a very last-minute move there, but he managed to get it done. He had that half-second gap, which I think we've realized in this race was really the sweet spot. He managed to get it done. That was a brilliant way to start off this great night of racing action.
That was fantastic. I mean, he's sitting here basically 3rd place, and he's just biding his time. He's waiting to get off this oval, off this corner onto the flat, and he makes his move to the inside down below the white line, which is completely legal, and carries all that momentum up to the win.
That was just about textbook, really. I mean, if he did it a little bit later, he probably wouldn't have been able to take the win there. So I think Josh Justice pulling off a fairly smooth move there at the end of it. I think a series of very great moves that we had all throughout tonight's race. We had some good moves coming through turn 1, good moves coming into turn 2, and that beautiful move there to take the win here in the MX-5s. I believe we just have a few more drivers going to cross the line here in a few moments time. Then I think we'll actually get some word with some of these drivers just talking about their MX-5 races and what they expect from the Spec Racer Fords here in a few moments time. And then after that, we'll be taking a look at the results. Joaquin Effinger going around that final corner, weaving. I think he might have some damage on that car, running a very intriguing line, you could say. That's a very interesting interpretation of track limits, and he spins wildly out of control and hits that safer barrier on the inside. So not a good race for Joaquin Effinger, and he ends with hitting the wall there. So not a good race for him in the MX-5s. He'll try and look for some kind of redemption here in the Spec Racer Fords in a few moments time, but I'm going to take a look out into the hallway, see if we have any drivers. I believe we do right now, and Jameson Huffman, I'll pass this off to you, Charles.
Hey, all right, Jameson Huffman. Matt Jameson, that was a fantastic race. I mean, it was you and Justice and Overstreet, and then Roland basically came from mid-pack, managed to work his way up, and made it a nice 4-car battle there to the very end.
Yeah, it was a fun battle. I think I could have taken that first if me and Roland didn't get kind of touch a little bit, and that just for some reason bent up my hood and basically took my corner panel off from the slightest of taps. That wasn't even a 4X. So, but other than that, it was a really fun race, and the strategy was a big part of it. So,
have you ran this track configuration before?
Nope. The first time I've run this was today. I just bought the track.
Just bought the track. Well, that's how we should do it, right? So no, it was like I said, obviously a great race. Obviously you picked it up pretty quick, and was able to get a podium again. So second week in a row that you're on the podium. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'll step in here for a bit and just ask some questions relating to the track. And really, we were outlining throughout the start of the broadcast that turn 1 was going to be a little bit difficult. Did you really feel that difficulty in 1, or was there another corner that was a little bit trickier?
Turn 1 wasn't too bad. Most of these corners aren't the end of the world. I would say turn 2 can get dicey just with the downshift into first gear. Can throw the car sideways pretty easily, especially cold tires. It can catch people out just like Lime Rock turn 2. But turn 1 isn't too bad. With the surfs, it's way worse though, because these cars, you can't just sit on the ABS the whole time and braking. So it's going to be a whole another level of fun going into 1 here.
Well, speaking of the Spec Racer Fords, what are you expecting from that race here in a few moments?
I'm just kind of hoping for a good race like that, because these are even more draft monsters than the Miatas. So I was testing it a little bit earlier. From like 8/10ths back, you can still take the win if it's just 2 cars. So pretty absurd.
Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. We saw some ridiculous slipstreaming here, and you were involved in that ridiculous slipstream-involved finish there with this MX-5 race. So thank you for joining us, and fingers crossed that you have a good race in the not the MX-5s, the Spec Racer Fords.
Yep, thank you.
That right there was Jameson Huffman. I think we'll bring in some quick words here with Lewis Lockshine.
Sure, absolutely. Lewis, top 5 today. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So how did you find the racing out there today?
Well, I had a little bit of damage after whatever lap was, maybe lap 2. And I just had not enough straight line speed to stay in front. I could stay with the back of the pack because I was able to just run my line while they were fighting each other, so that was helpful. But I just did not have straight line speed, unfortunately, with that little bit of front end damage.
Yeah. So are you going to be in for the next race as well for SRS?
I will not know.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So yeah, you're going to miss one though. I promise it's going to be a great race. So Ron, over to you if you have any questions.
Oh, I was going to ask you about the Spec Racer Ford race, but I guess we could just kind of chit-chat and just talk about this track as a whole. It was a little bit of an unknown quantity heading into this race. I'm sure it was for some of the drivers as well. So how much practice did you get just trying to learn the combination here in the sim?
The track layout I've actually known for a little bit because I've done a GT3 race here, and then it was just a matter of getting the car up to speed. It was a really fun track with this car, actually. It's very slidey. Very easy to get the grips to, so it's very fun.
I've got the sand offline, which I can imagine makes it a little bit of a slip and slide if you make one sort of mistake, especially going through turn 1. We saw some drivers get bit by that throughout this race, but that was a very good race from our perspective in the booth. So how was it just battling with all those drivers? Do you think this track is really good for battling, or do you think it's a little bit tough?
Oh no, that was very fun battling, because you have to keep in mind, even if you pass them in the infield, they could always just pass you right back on the banking, so you have to think strategically about the move you make, and it was very fun. I got around Jim, and then unfortunately he got around me, and I just wasn't quite able to get around him back, and that was a lot of fun doing that. I did apologize to him for tapping him on that final lap there. I just did not back out soon enough. I just tried to stay off him, but I did apologize to him after the race was over.
Well, you could have just said that Robin's racing, certainly the case with these MX-5s, and fingers crossed that you're back with us at Summit Point in 1 week's time. Thank you for joining us and here in the commentary booth tonight. I want you to like to give thanks to our shout-outs.
I'd like to give a shout out to Remy, actually, Les Bronze. He was in the race with us. He's one of my best friends from Germany right now, and his internet just cut out while he was in the middle of that battle. I'd like to know where he would have finished if he stayed there with us. But thanks to you guys for broadcasting, and thanks to Stevie Ray for hosting out the league. This is a very fun league.
Thank you very much for the praise, and I feel like I have to send an apology to him through you because we probably butchered his pronunciation throughout the MX-5 race, but he definitely was. Yeah, he definitely was driving very good. So fingers crossed we get to see him a little bit throughout the rest of the season. But thank you so much for joining us, and fingers crossed we see you at Summit Point.
Yeah, man. Have a good one. Enjoy the next race.
Certainly will do, Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us. And to cap off the MX-5 race here tonight, we're going to take a look at your race results here from this first race here of the Ray Esports Racing League. And it's going to be Josh Justice taking a fairly surprising win. I don't believe he led many laps. I believe that might have been the only lap he led all throughout this MX-5 race, but it was the one that mattered the most. He takes a win here just barely over Jameson Huffman and Roland. You can see that gap there just about 5 thousandths of a second separating Huffman and Roland, so that was incredibly close between those two to round off your podium. Then we have Megan Overstreet in P4, Lewis Lockshine, who we just talked to, in 5th, Jim Brewster rounding out your top 6, and Trent Kramer, who clawed the most amount of positions, I believe, but between the start and the finish, he actually clawed up 13. Taking a look, 13 positions between the start and the finish, so he puts together a good race there to finish in P7. Stevie Ray putting on a good recovery, up 9 spots between the start and the finish to finish in 8th. That's John Wilson and Brad Gold rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, so P11 we had Andrew Wozencroft, and then Brandon Abbott in 12th. Charlie Vaccaro, who had a couple issues during the race, in 13th. Wayne Buttermore, Stephen Blevin in 14th and 15th. Seth Spolman, 16th. Bryce Evans, 17th. Joaquin Effinger in 18th. We had Rich Green in P19, and the aforementioned Remy Lesperance in P20, and Richard Franco, who did not take the grid, so finishes 21st.
21 cars here in the MX-5 race, and fingers crossed that we have even more competitors and even more hard racing here coming up in the Spec Racer Ford race. We'll be back in a few moments' time in the new session, and we hope you stick around after these messages.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to see something very much akin to a NASCAR-style plate race. I think with that very long flat-out blast, these drivers are going to be incredibly close. We might see a little bit of bump drafting like we saw in the MX-5s, but I think this infield section might be a little bit of a diegetic break. Just to break it up a little bit, you can see a beautiful drift there from Skip Brock Jr. coming out of the hairpin, which we outlined during the MX-5 race as being one of the most important corners on this track. But with these cars that are a little bit slower, I think it's even more important here. So we might see that play a massive role when it comes to battles, and certainly a massive role when it comes to qualifying. Jamison Huffman, once again at the pole position, you can see him at a 127.5, but a much smaller gap between himself and Megan Overstreet in P2 in the MX-5 race. We saw a gap of about 0.8 of a second between Huffman and your eventual winner, Josh Justice. So a little bit of a smaller gap, and I think the reason why that could be the case is a very strong slipstream that a lot of these drivers are getting from just cars that are probably about 5 car lengths ahead of them. That's really helping tow these cars along.
Absolutely, yeah. The slipstream is going to be so important on qualifying. It doesn't surprise me that we've got a much tighter gap. I thought the Huffman lap was fantastic in the MX-5, but it kind of felt like an outlier. And then once we saw the race, you kind of saw that, because he never really could just get away from the cars behind. And so I fully expect this to be very similar to that. Somebody's going to get out front and lead it, and then the next time we get in the draft, it's going to be somebody else leading the race, and it's going to be like that almost from start to finish.
Well, I think in the dying moments of this qualifying session, we'll give a shout out to one of the sponsors of the series, a proud sponsor of the series that joined us last time out in Lime Rock Park, and that is the Inside the SCCA podcast. I'm a firm enjoyer of podcasts myself, so I think if you're a fan of the SCCA and podcasts, you will enjoy this as well. The Inside the SCCA podcast features all things SCCA, from road racing to autocross and track night in America. Every week, the podcast talks with racers, the club brass, and some of the legends from the SCCA. The Inside the SCCA podcast is available on the RacingWire Podcast Network on all major podcast platforms. New episodes drop every Friday, so you can listen to them on the way to the track. The Inside the SCCA podcast is one of the proud partners of the Ray Esports Racing League. A fairly quick ad read so we can get to the meat and gravy when it comes to this race, and the meat and gravy right now is Jamison Huffman grabbing another pole position, which I think will probably be his 4th in a row now. Fingers crossed that he can convert that into a win here in the Spec Racer Fords. It's been a while since we saw the Spec Racer Fords. The last time we saw them was on, I'm trying to think now, it was December the 28th, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to hawk him back. Actually, no, it's December the 27th. I'm going to correct myself there. Actually, I need to get this information correct, but it's been a while since we saw the Spec Racer Fords. We haven't seen them since the season opener back in December of 2023, so we're ringing in the new year with the Spec Racer Fords, where these drivers are going to have their second race of the year. And I think, unlike Laguna Seca, where they were driving at last time out with these Spec Racer Fords, I think this track is really, Hawkins, no similarities to it whatsoever. The track, of course, Laguna Seca, a little bit high up in elevation. Well, not very high up in elevation, but certainly high up in elevation compared to this track. We were kind of, I was joking when I saw the graphic right before this broadcast got underway, how the elevation said 4 feet. I kind of find that funny. So there's really no comparisons that you can give between Laguna Seca and Homestead, but I think the common denominator will be these cars, and the common denominator is going to be some really good racing here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw these the Weekend Warriors a couple of seasons ago raced here, and that's a big grid. It's normally 50 cars, and they put on a show. It was a fantastic race. So we've got a smaller grid here, but I still think there's going to be some great racing because these cars are just going to kind of, it's going to be hard for anybody to get a huge advantage. And they'll just be stuck together for most of the race.
Well, fingers crossed this race here for the Spec Racer Fords is going to cap off a great night of racing here for the Ray Esports Racing League. We had the MX-5 race, which I hope you all tuned in here. It was fantastic to watch, as most MX-5 races here are on Apex Racing TV with the Ray Esports Racing League. We also had a untelevised, unbroadcasted race of me trying to get a glass of water filled between these two races. I was running and nearly cracked my skull open in the kitchen running on a hardwood floor with socks on. That could have ended in absolute tears for me. But I think to cap off this great night of racing action, we have the spec race reports, and the drivers are now on their way. So I think we might take a look at the starting grid here soon. I apologize to our producer Josh, who's probably had that hemmed up for a little bit. You have Jamison Huffman starting from the pole position yet again, but a much smaller gap, less than a tenth of a second between himself and Megan Overstreet completing your front row. That's Brad Gold in P3, a little bit farther behind of the two than Skip Rock Jr. with that very striking number 68 car with that very striking drift as well that he had coming through the hairpin during the qualifying session. He will start this race in 4th. That's Andrew Rosencroft in P5, Trent Kramer, who's one of the highest position gainers, starting in P6. And we're going to have Josh Justice, your race winner from the MX5, starting in P7. Stephen Blethen in P8. Stevie Ray, the series admin, he will be in P9, with Bryce Evans rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, P11, Charlie Vaccaro, Seth Bowman beside him in P12. And we got Joe Camilleri in 13th, Wayne Buttermore in 14th, Joaquin Evinger in 15th, and Raymond Blethen, I'm going to say relation to Stephen probably, is P16, did not set a time, so he'll start in the back of the pack.
That is your field from this race here tonight. It's a little bit of a shorter field compared to the MX-5s, but I think it's still going to be I'll say bad butt. I don't want to say the particular word that some people use relating to a donkey, but I think it's going to be a bad butt race that we're going to have here in a few moments' time. It's going to all start, and I think it's going to be another hard-fought battle here. I think this time Megan Overstreet may try and stake her claim on that front running position. She led a little bit, pulled off that fantastic 3-wide move in the MX-5s to take the lead in the race earlier this evening, so we might see her try and do a little bit of harder racing than we saw from her earlier tonight. We might see that from her. We'll just have to wait and see. It's going to all matter on that start. A little bit of a shorter run between the start-finish straightaway, the start-finish line where the drivers are going to take the green, and that turn 1, which is going to be a little bit trickier. But as we were talking to Jamison Huffman after the MX-5 race, he's really focused on turn 2 with these cars not having ABS, unlike the MX-5s. It's going to be really tricky trying to get woed up after the corner that I described as threading the eye of a needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket. So the drivers are coming around the final banked corner now. We're going to see that Porsche pace car make the hard left turn to go down off the banking and onto pit road. Yeah, you can see that Porsche has made that hard turn there. The field is now in the hands of your pole sitter, Jamison Huffman. We're going to look to see when the green flag is out, and it's out now, and it's going to be an even keel start there between your front row sitters, but you can see a little bit of dicing farther behind there. I believe that's Josh Justice trying to go for a move there around the outside. We might ooh, that's very close. I thought he was going to try and sneak a wheel there on the outside of Megan Overstreet, but up towards the front you can see Jamison Huffman staking his claim on that front running position for now. I doubt very highly that they're going to be able to pull any sort of gaps when it comes to the Spec Racer Ford race, but it's looking pretty good right now for Huffman, but that gap is still fairly small between those two, so I think that battling will definitely be hotting up between now and the checkered flag. We still have about 20 minutes ahead of us before then, but right now fairly single file all around. A much cleaner start than we expected in the MX-5s. I say that with caution, knowing that last week when I said that we had much cleaner starts than the formulas during the MX-5 race, we had a 15-car pile up there. So fingers crossed we don't have that this time by, but right now it's looking very clean for this field.
Yeah, good start by everybody. Everybody got away cleanly. No incidents so far. There's a little bit of bumping and some checking up, but everybody still just kind of nose to tail as we're getting started here.
And right now, these drivers, I think, are playing a little bit cautious right now. I think these drivers realize that you can't win the race in the first 5 minutes, but he can definitely lose it. We saw a lot of drivers getting caught out by mistakes all throughout this race, but despite that, we still see some hard battling here. You can see, I think right now, your pole sitter right now, Jamison Huffman, is going to be a little bit of a sitting duck here. Actually, I say that he has gotten a little bit of drafting help there. We've got some tandem drafting here. Oh, you can see Skip Rock Jr. pulling to the outside, trying to get the move done here. I don't think he'll have enough pace to get the move done on Huffman, or maybe he will. Oh no, you can see contact there. It's going to be really close on the rejoin there. Ooh, a little bit of clipping there. I believe that's Wozencroft that got clipped there on the rejoin. I believe that was Gould that was spinning, if I'm not mistaken. He was the one that was spinning wildly out of control through the grass on the inside of that corner. Unfortunately, clips Wozencroft and takes both of them out of contention. Right as I was talking about the race being clean so far, we have drama coming into the second corner on lap 2.
Yeah, that was just, just tight racing. And we didn't talk about this in the first race, but one of the little aspects of a roval like this is the transition from the oval part down to the infield. It's not really smooth. It's kind of, there's an angle there, and so you have to be very careful because it will upset the car. And I think that might have been that incident might have been a byproduct of that. Just some hard racing side by side, dropping down off the oval onto the infield, and then contact was made, and Gould and then Wozencroft, I think, got the worst out of everybody.
When it comes to these spec racer Ford cars, where really the only sort of aerodynamic pieces are the mirrors, that could be the reason why it's very tricky coming through that first corner, because if you had any sort of adverse weight transfer there, you could be in for a world of hurt. But you can see Skip Rock Jr. is trying to put a world of hurt right now on your front runners. He's actually going to nearly take the lead here coming into turn 2. He backs off a little bit there. He's actually going to lose the position there from Huffman, who manages to regain first. He's actually going to lose even more spots here. He's really getting hung out to dry on the outside. Might lose another position here to Kramer. He's going to be stuck on the outside. Actually, no, Skip Rock Jr. manages to clear him going into the fourth corner there. But that was some pretty hard stuff there heading into turn 2. That's going to be the flare-up spot all throughout tonight's race, and we have a replay here to see some of the drama that was ensuing farther behind. I believe this might have been the replay of the other chaos that we had here involving Calamariu. We can see some off-road action here. A lot of drivers going off the road. There's a driver off farther behind, a driver off farther ahead, but you can see there from the 06 driver. Actually, that was he was one of the last to arrive on the scene of the hard incident that happened there. You can see Wozencroft right at the tail end of it, him spinning and actually getting hit there from the rejoin from the driver that was spinning wildly out of control. There's a lot going on in this race, so I feel bad for our producer Josh because he has a little incident ticker, and I can imagine it's just a giant bright red bar over about 30 seconds. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of drivers going off. It's like someone had some kind of quick dry down there or something. Maybe sand from the beach not too far away from the track could have been the reason why a lot of drivers were slipping wildly out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. There's a lot there with as we see this Brock trying to make that attempt to get back into the lead again, and Kramer actually getting the lead. So both the back cars there were able to leapfrog over the cars they were trailing and make the pass, and then Kramer's up to the lead. Obviously, Kramer had a really great race last race in the MX-5. And then Brock looks very racy tonight, so he might be one to watch for the last little bit of this race.
Once again, Trent Kramer, who is really the biggest position gainer in the MX-5 race. He is once again the big position gainer so far this race, up 5. The only driver that is really contending with him was Raymond Blethen, who was running in P11 but actually dropped down to P12. So he's now up only 4. I say only 4. That's still a pretty good race to have so far when you're only about 5 minutes in. But right now, Trent Kramer is in a class of his own, currently running at the front. But I think things will definitely change. I can imagine you can see the gaps between the drivers running at the front of the field. The top 5 separate now by 1.5 seconds, with Blethen right now in P6, about a second behind Josh Justice there in P5. So I think this fight is going to be really, really close. I think they're spread out a little bit, but we were told by Jamison Huffman at the end of the MX-5 race that 0.8 of a second is really a good gap, and certainly Skip Rock Jr. is using that to his advantage. Megan Overstreet might be using it to her advantage here. You can see that she's closing up massively, trying to get the move done on Skip Rock Jr., trying to take 2 cars at once here, going to try and cut it very close there with the inside there. And I believe Megan Overstreet, she's going to clear him coming in to turn 2. So Megan Overstreet now clawing into that first position as Trent Kramer and Skip Rock Jr. start to battle farther behind. Wow, this is really, I can't tell if this is exceeding our expectations, meeting them, or what, because this has just been awesome so far.
Absolutely, yeah. So a couple of things that I see is these guys, once Overstreet got by, they kind of battled side by side for a couple of corners, which actually allowed her to get away just a little bit, half second, not a lot. They'll make that back up. They're still well within the draft range for these cars. But I'm thinking when we get toward the end of this, I think P3 is where you want to be going into that last lap. I think that with that, just the way these cars are drafting the overspeed, I think P3 is going to be a good position. So we're going to look and see who kind of hangs in there and is prepping for that final lap.
I'm going to take a look at my live timing screen just to really try and give the viewers an idea of how quickly these cars are going when they're in the draft. We're following Jameson Huffman right now, who's going about 135 miles an hour right now. The driver ahead of him, you can see that, Trent Kramer, he's going about a mile or 2 miles an hour quicker than the cars further up the road, so the draft really helps these cars a lot. So you can imagine the closing speed here. You can see Huffman, whoa my god, I thought he was going to try and thread the needle there. He was going about 4 miles an hour quicker than Trent Kramer has actually gone off. You can see him did a little bit of rally action there on the runoff area of turn 2. Ooh, you can see that's a big lock up there from, that was, I believe that was Josh Justice there.
Yep.
That was, I can imagine both of his front tires right now are rectangles. That was a massive lockup and a little bit of contact there for Trent Kramer, who's now back to where he started after leading just a few moments ago. Ooh, we have another driver spinning off here. That's, ooh, that was nearly disastrous there. That's Stevie Ray there, who is currently running in 12th after that crash. We're going to get a replay to see what in the world happened to him.
Yep, just coming down. Looks like we're coming into, yep. All right, and just, yeah, just, oh, I think he kind of checked up as the car came across onto the racing line, and he just had to basically lock it up and spun the car. I think that was basically collision avoidance.
I think we had some other drama going on farther behind. You can see Trent Kramer has now dropped down to P8, so he's had a very terrible turn of things. He has a very terrible turn of fortune as of late, so we're getting a replay to see what might have happened to him. We're following Seth Spolman right now in the number 42 car. He was running quite a long ways behind, so I think he might have been involved in this fight here. Actually, that was a little bit before that. So we're following Trent Kramer now, heading into the hairpin, one of the heaviest braking zones on the infield section of this circuit. Goes there, and ooh, a little bit of a spin there. So yeah. Trent Kramer, another spin, multiple spins. Well, he had the off there coming through turn 2, and then another spin there coming through the hairpin on the midsection of this circuit. So I gotta imagine the grass on the tires might have been the reason why he picked up a little bit of gravel, a little bit of grass. And with these cars that yet again do not have any aerodynamic grip really to speak of, that mechanical grip is so important, especially in those low speed corners. And it's just very, very tough break for him. He was putting together a fantastic race, but sadly for him, he is definitely on the back foot. Yeah,
unfortunately, he's definitely on the back foot. And now he's got about a 3.5 second gap to make up to get up to the next position. But we're going to talk about the first incident with him and Justice. You can see what them just having to check up for the spinning car or the off-track car has done. It's allowed the top 3 to just kind of check out now. So it looks like this is going to be a 3-way battle. I don't think, unless these cars get together, I don't think they can catch those 3 up front. I know Justice has been quick all night, but 1 versus 3 doesn't usually work. So if the drivers up here are smart, they'll try and stay in line and maybe do a little working together for a couple of laps, and then they can battle again. But it looks like Huffman wants to go back up to the lead.
Yeah, Huffman, wow, a very good run from him. It looked like he was going to clear, and he does actually clear Megan Overstreet heading into turn 1 there. So fantastic run from Jameson Huffman. He doesn't realize that teamwork makes a dream work there. He just decided to go for the lead. And can you really blame the guy? It's always good to have bragging rights. By leading the most amount of laps, he's been a man running up at the front all throughout these races as of late. And once again, running at the front of the Spec Racer Ford race. We're over the halfway mark now in the final 9 minutes of this race, nearing the final 9 minutes of this race, shall I say. And I think once again it's going to be a hard race up towards the front, but I think it's I'm really split on how things can go. I think I think Jameson Huffman right now, who's actually lost that position to Megan Overstreet, might have made some kind of mistake coming through the hairpin, or it could have been a strategic move just to let her by going onto the NASCAR oval section and then just be able to blow by her going down the start finish straight away. That could be the reason why, but you said a few moments ago there, Charles, probably about 5 laps ago at this rate, that the position that you want to be in is P3. Do you still stand by that, or do you think you'd want to be in the middle and be in P2 by the time this race is about to near its end?
I think you're going to get an idea as we see Huffman's kind of looking outside of just what I was talking about. So here's Brock, who's been racing from the start from the drop of the green flag. He's definitely just lifted at this point. He's just kind of riding. Yeah, he doesn't want to. I don't think he wants to show, but I still think P3 is going to be the right position. I just think that you just get so much of a run behind those 2 cars, especially now that it's just those three, as we see both Huffman and Overstreet off in the grass. I think now that it's just those three that are going to be battling, I definitely think P3 is the spot you want to be in.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that was a nice little bit of mental trickery there from Skip Rock Jr. I was listening very carefully, going down that start-finish straightaway, and I heard some very big cracks off of the throttle, so I think he is, it's a little bit of it's like a racing poker game, shall we say. A lot of these drivers not trying to show what they have in their hand until the end where you really have no counter. That's what worked for Josh Justice. It worked like a dream for him a few moments ago, and he's involved in this fight. Actually just got the move done on Stephen Blethen after he made a mistake coming through the hairpin, clipped the grass, and did a little bit of wig-wagging action there in the grass to try and regain that car. But meanwhile, up towards the front, the battling has continued once again here between Huffman, Overstreet, and Brock. This is going to be a very hard-fought battle here, but I think Brad Gould, I think it's a little bit farther. He's definitely not going to be able to catch them up between now and the checkered flag, so I can imagine Brad Gould is hoping that all three of these drivers come to blows between now and the checkered flag. He's probably looking at his relatives and hoping for all three of these drivers to take each other out, but right now, we're seeing these drivers not really even attempt to race. I can hear Skip Rock Jr. just lifting out like every 2 seconds, basically. Not even. He's just barely on the throttle going down that start-finish straightaway. And I think Megan Overstreet was doing that as well. So I think, as you can see, Megan Overstreet getting the move done on Jamison Huffman going into turn 3. So I think these drivers are trying to save their hands and see what they can do, try and save up their stuff, and try and pull a surprise out of their hat when it comes to the checkered flag of this race.
I think you're exactly right. I think that might have been, Huffman just kind of faded and left the inside open and let Overstreet come through. So I think that there's a little bit of strategy by all three of these drivers that are just kind of playing out here. And they're just saying, okay, you know what, we'll get to the we'll play the games for now, and then we'll get to the last couple of laps, and then we'll show the hand. As you see Huffman going wide again in that corner. I don't know if that's his line. I have seen him go wide there a couple of times, but so that might be his normal line through there. It just kind of looks like he's just leaving that apex of those corners open, and if they want to take it and go through, that he's willing to let them do that. So I think they all kind of recognize that they probably don't want to be in the lead. That's not the place you want to be going to the last lap of this race.
Yeah, I think the lead is probably the least advantageous position you want to be in. Certainly, Jamison Huffman is trying to be in that lead right now. As you can see, he's trying to get the move done around the outside, heading into turn 1, and doesn't clear Megan Overstreet there just yet. So Megan Overstreet clocking the laps in the lead for now, but I think there's going to be a lot that changes between now and the checkered flag. We've now hit the final quarter of this race. 5 minutes left to go here, and we've got battling all throughout the field. Is battling between Wozencroft and Blethen for P9 here. This is close between these two, who are really in a race of their own right now. About 6 seconds separates the two Blethens in P8 and P9, and then between Wozencroft is Evans, who's about 30 seconds back of Overstreet and about 11 seconds behind Wozencroft. So really these two in a race of their own, really just relaxing and trying to battle as hard as they can between now and the checkered flag. We'll keep an eye on them to see how their battle ends up for the last two positions in the top 10. Stevie Ray's pulled into the pits. Not sure what in the world might have happened to him. Maybe some kind of connection issue. Maybe fixing some of the damage that he picked up a little bit earlier. Maybe we had some kind of incident that we didn't see, but he is running in P15, not having a very good race for him. I think we might get a replay after this battling here between Huffman and Megan Overstreet. You mentioned the point there of drivers not really giving away all their secrets. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine many moons ago that I used to race with back in the karting days, and he basically said that whenever we do a course walk at the autocross tracks that we used to run at, he would basically hide all of his secrets just to try and give himself the psychological advantage. So the mind games are definitely playing a big role right now, but bump drafting is too. That was a pretty big bump there from Skip Rock Jr. going down the start-finish straightaway, and it pushed Megan Overstreet back into the lead yet again. So I gotta imagine if Jamison Huffman was lifting out of the gas quite hard there going down the start-finish straightaway, I think next time by we might have to see if he did, but I think we might now, since all the drivers have entered the infield section of this course, we'll take a look at the replay to see what's going on there. I believe this might have been the incident with Stevie Ray, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is, going down into the hairpin here, one of the tightest corners on this whole track. It's a corner that we've seen many drivers make mistakes on so far tonight. tonight. And another one from the series admin, just carried a little bit too much speed, got some tail happy action there, and hopefully rejoined the track without incident. That looked pretty close there, but I think definitely not having a good race for him, as he's now towed back to the pits and is currently running in last, and I think he's out of it.
Yeah, I think Stevie said, you know what, it's probably time to just park the car for today, and we'll come back next week. He'll be in our Sunday races as well, so he'll get plenty more racing in the spec racer before he's ready to come back for the Ray Esports round next week at Summit Point.
Also got a lot of other action here on Apex I will touch on in a few moments' time after this battling fizzles off here, which it definitely is. And oh my god, that was an incredibly offentageous bump there from Skip Rock Jr. That is not really a move that you see work at all, but I think that was I think Megan Overstreet was definitely not feeling really good after that bump. That was that could have ended in absolute tears for all of them. That was incredibly close.
Yeah, I think Overstreet may have lifted to let Huffman go on through, and I don't think Brock was expecting it, and so that bump came in a little hotter than he even probably expected. But it does look like this damaged the car, so they're continuing on, and we got to be coming up. This ought to be the white flag lap coming up now.
I believe it will. Just about 1.5 minute lap times here. So yes, this will be the white flag this time by. Thank you for your math, Charles. I never did good in math class back in the day, so I'll have to rely on your math skills for the rest of this season here on Ray Esports to try and figure out when these races are actually ending, but it will be the white flag this time by. And I doubt very highly it's going to be Jamison Huffman taking that white flag. We'll see if these drivers trying to cool off a little bit and try and stay behind each other or tuck in. It's kind of like those speed skating events that you see at the Winter Olympics, where you see these drivers sort of be in a line for quite some time and then start to battle towards the end of these races. But I think right now all these drivers are staying line astern. We might see a big move going on to the start finish straight away here. Are we going to see one from Megan Overstreet? Are we going to see one from Skip Rock Jr.? I don't think we're going to see a move from either of them. You can see a little bit of bump drafting there. Megan Overstreet helping out her competitor Jamison Huffman there heading into turn one, but right now these three drivers are running a line astern. I think Jamison Huffman might have gone a little bit off the track there. Opened the door just barely for Megan Overstreet to think about going for a move going into that second corner. Actually, that was the third corner. My apologies there. But actually, through all that, I think Skip Rock Jr. picked up a little bit of front end damage. I saw a little bit of damage on the front end of that car.
Yeah, I think that was from that extra hard bump draft that he gave the lap before. So yeah, no, they're not passing yet. They're going to stay just like this. Huffman may try and go wide in a couple of corners to kind of entice them a bit, but I think you're going to see these cars lined up like this. Well, I say that, and then Overstreet to the outside. But
they're going very slow.
They are going very slow.
Yeah. That was mind games there. That was kind of like a few years ago at the F1 race where Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton were trying to let each other by for the DRS there. So I think that might have been a little bit of mental screwery there involving all those drivers, but Megan Overstreet running on the outside line there, so you can she's trying to let both of them by. That's a very bold move there, just trying to get the great run going on to the start-finish straight away. Right now, it's Jamison Huffman in the lead, but I don't think it will be by the time they reach the checkered flag. Skip Rock Jr. is pulled to the outside, trying to get the move done. I think he will be able to get the move done. So Skip Rock Jr. going to take the win by 34 thousandths of a second over Jamison Huffman. That is incredibly close between those two, with a front end of a Spec Racer Ford that looks ready for the trash can. He is actually going to take the win from tonight's race. Fairly textbook move there. Megan Overstreet, I knew what she was doing there, running a little bit wide, running on the high banks there, not running on the bottom, just trying to let the two of them by. But I was kind of expecting that coming into that final corner on the infield. Those drivers were going to try and let each other by just to get that slipstream, but we're getting a look at the move that Skip Rock Jr. managed to pull off to take the win in the Spec Racer Fords here tonight. You gotta feel bad for Jamison Huffman, who comes so close yet so far away to taking 2 wins once again tonight, but it's not meant to be. Skip Rock Jr. pulling that might have been just a nose length between those two, probably a few feet separating them by the checkered flag. So 20 minutes, a 20-minute long race comes down to that for the win. A 20-minute race A 20-minute long race came down to this with this battle farther down the order. You can see Josh Justice there running a Megan Overstreet line a little bit farther up on the high banks, trying to get a good run here. Going on to the start-finish straightaway. Trent Kramer, meanwhile, tried to pull out to get a move done on the number 221 car there. And we're going to see Josh Justice possibly make it 3 wide. Yes, he does, but it's too little too late as Trent Kramer managed to pick off the both of them. And taking a look at my live timing screen, he actually finished this race in 5th. So up 1 position from where he started this race. But whew, I am out of breath. That was, I think that exceeded the expectations we had for this race. What do you think, Charles?
Absolutely. And just for the folks watching at home, how much slower those top 3 were going. Brad Gould finished 4th. He picked up 2.5 seconds, I think, on the last lap. So yeah, they were definitely, there was a lot of cat and mouse going on there on that final lap. But yeah, great finish. You know, when you can get 3 cars separated by a tenth and a half, you know you've had a good race.
All right, well, I think we'll take a look at the results here from the Spec Racer Ford action here from the Ray Esports Racing League. It was a beautiful return here for the Spec Racer Fords. First time we've seen them since the end of December. It's Jamison Huffman who grabbed the pole for this race, but he did not take the win of tonight's race. That was actually Skip Rock Jr. Taking that command in that very striking number 68 car. He takes a win. It was actually 37 thousandths of a second between those two at the checkered flag. Still incredibly close regardless. So those two finish P1 and P2. Megan Overstreet will round off the podium in 3rd. That's Brad Gould in P4. Trent Kramer putting on a nice recovery drive to finish in 5th. I'm sure he's probably still a little bit irked after how his race went there. That's Charlie Vaccaro finishing in a somewhat quiet P6. That's Josh Justice in 7th. Stephen Blethen in 8th. Raymond Blethen in 9th. And that's Andrew Wozencroft rounding at your top 10.
Yeah, so P11, Bryce Evans, Wayne Buttermore in P12. Joaquin Effinger in 13th, the Canadian Joe Camilleri in P14, Seth Spolman in P15, and the only car that was not on the lap was our race organizer, Stevie Ray, 4 laps down on the field.
Definitely not a good night of racing action from him, but one driver that had a really good night of racing action, certainly in the Spec Racer Fords, was Skip Rock Jr. We're going to bring him in for some quick words about how his race went tonight. Skip Rock Jr., thank you so much for joining us here in the comms box. How was that Spec Racer Ford race? It looked pretty exciting from our end. What about yours?
Exciting, stupid, and yeah, really funny. You know, I was really aggressive for the first portion of the race. I knew I needed to be in the top 3, and then once the top 3 kind of broke away, there were some incidents and stuff. At that point, it was just a waiting game, and it was pretty fun.
Well, when we were seeing that waiting game and seeing both you and Megan Overstreet and Jamison Huffman really cracking out of the throttle and just letting each other kind of go by, I think we were kind of comparing it to poker, but at the start of this broadcast, we compared it to a high-speed game of Frogger. So do you think that was the case here with the Spec Racer Ford race?
4D chess, I think, is what it was. It was everyone was trying to figure out where they wanted to be. I think most people thought they wanted to be in second, or I think both of them maybe thought they wanted to be in second. I thought I wanted to be in 3rd. And Jamison, I think, wanted to be in 1st going into the final lap so that he could, you know, move in the final corner and kind of do something funky there. I knew to expect something there, but no matter who was in the lead, someone was going to try something. And so we went like, I think, probably 30 miles an hour through the final corner there. It was pretty funny, but I just knew I needed to stay in 3rd. I used, I think it was Megan's draft when she went up on the oval. I went behind her because I knew I needed that momentum onto the final straight, and it worked out.
Yeah, I think you can join me and Charles in that suspicion of having some funky stuff going into that final hairpin, exiting the infield. We were expecting some screwy stuff to happen there, and that's exactly what we got. It was good gamesmanship between all you two, but you described that race in your first part there as being stupid. So this may be a little bit of a loaded question, but how do you like this track, and how do you like this car at this track?
Oh, I love this track, and I actually do enjoy the car. I think the draft is a little bit ridiculous, but that does make for fun races. It drives weird, kind of unlike any other car. I think it's got an open diff, which makes it super strange. But I always enjoy the races in these cars because the draft forces you to stay together. They do pretty well side by side. They're very controllable cars. So yeah, I mean, I used to kind of hate this track, but now I'm kind of I don't usually run that full oval, and that makes it pretty fun.
Well, I think now after taking the win, you might have to feel a little bit of a soft spot in your heart for taking the win here tonight. And what are your thoughts heading into Summit Point?
Well, I'm not positive I can do Summit Point, but if I can, my thoughts are just try to hang in there. I'm not fast on that track, and some of these people, I know Megan's really quick there. Everyone else seems like they're super fast there, and I'm just not. I'm a southern boy, so I don't get up there north, you know.
I think our co-commentator Charles is laughing at that quote, and he can relate to that being from Alabama. So, Skip, thank you so much for joining us. Anyone would like to give thanks to or shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out my dad, I think, is watching, and shout out to my Spec Miata team in real life, OPM, with Tom Fowler. Yeah, everyone who watches and supports, it's really fun. It's silly stuff, but it seems like everyone really enjoys watching it, and I can see why. Like, a race like this is really fun.
Well, I'll tell you, I enjoy commentating it because this series always, it never disappoints when it comes to the action department. So, Skip, thank you so much for joining us, and fingers crossed we'll see you at Summit Point.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Skip Brock Jr., your winner from the MX-5 race. And Charles, who would you like to talk to?
Well, let's go ahead and go second place, Jameson Huffman. Jameson, so P2 and P2 tonight. I was kind of, so were you thinking second place was the place to be, or were you thinking of a different strategy? Because, obviously it became a little bit of a chess battle there in the last few laps of the race.
Yeah, I was thinking I could get away with second because I practiced it a few times and it worked each time. And I was thinking just kind of like slam on the brakes and just kind of hold up the person behind in third and then just get a really good run out and screw up the person behind run. And it worked a few times, but the last lap everything got thrown out the board because of what we were doing in the final corner, so it was kind of all over the place.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned a couple of minutes ago that the Brad Gould that finished P4 was 2.5 seconds faster than you guys on the last lap, just because of the I don't want to go first, you go first, trying to get into that final corner for the run on the oval.
Yeah, I was trying to just you go first because I've done that a few times and didn't really end how I wanted it to end that time, but it was pretty funny looking back at it, just realizing that we pretty much all stopped in that corner.
Yeah, otherwise though, fantastic race. Kind of what you mentioned in the interview after the MX-5 race, the draft is just so powerful with these cars here that there were lots of position changes, and so from start to finish, we were just trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah, you pretty much just had to keep your tires under you and don't do anything too risky until about like the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on another P2, and so 2 podiums tonight, 2 wins last week, and so we'll see you next week.
Yep, see you guys.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
That was Jameson Huffman, your bridesmaid from both of the races here tonight. Could be a little bit of a... actually, we'll see what happens in Summit Point. He finished first in both of the races at Lime Rock Park. He finishes in second in both of the races here at Homestead. We'll see if he finishes in third in both of the races in Summit Point. Then we'll talk about some weird kind of curse. But I think I'll take the privilege of talking to your MX-5 winner from earlier in tonight's race, Josh Justice. Thank you so much for joining us, my friend. How's the race?
Oh, the MX-5 race was insane. I was just, very, very exciting to be able to hang on to the back of that group with the draft, because they were all probably half a second faster than me in terms of all pace. But, I just held on to the draft and I just stayed in the back. I was around 5th in the pack for most of the race. And with about 3 laps to go, I just started making moves on the front stretch coming out of the oval. And I just put myself kind of in the right place at the right time, being in third place coming off the back stretch that final lap.
We're in the right place at the right time. That was a really strong feature of both of the races, both the MX-5 race earlier and the Spec Racer Ford race here tonight. So coming into Summit Point here in 1 week's time, how do you fancy your chances there?
Probably not great. I'll probably finish like 5th, 6th, something like that. It's I'm okay at the track. I'm just not very good at the low portion, the parallel and the turn after it. So I usually lose a little bit on the front of the pack there in both classes. But I'm hoping I can just kind of keep up with the front pack and maybe get a podium.
I think a podium, I don't think you would turn that down in the slightest. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to hear from you, and fingers crossed we see you on the field at Summit Point in 1 week's time, my friend.
Yep, sounds good.
Take care, Josh. And that was Josh Justice, the MX5 winner here, and we have one more driver waiting in the interview waiting room, the hallway here outside of our comms box, and I'll pass it off to you, Charles, to have a word with Megan Overstreet.
Yeah, Megan Overstreet with the P3, so we talked with the other two guys that were involved in that last lap, and I'm gonna guess that you were pretty much in the same boat. Was you did not want to be leading going on the oval for the final time.
That's correct. None of us wanted to be leading, so we were all coming to almost a complete stop right before the hairpin. And I said, all right, I'm going to gun it, and hopefully I can swing wide going into turn 3 and hopefully let them by and sneak back into the draft and get them on the front stretch. But unfortunately, I was a little bit too far ahead whenever I got to turn 3, so it didn't work out quite right.
Yeah, so I think you finished. Did you finish third in the first race, or was it fourth?
It was fourth.
Okay, so but you were obviously running up front, and I was telling the broadcast that we ran this in the Weekend Warriors a couple of seasons ago, so I felt like you were pretty familiar with the track, and it was some really good racing, and it ended up being another good night of racing for both these classes.
I'm real glad we didn't run the chicane of death at the very end of the track. Those tire barriers do not move in that final chicane and that layout.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Megan, congratulations on a P3, and we'll see you. I think they said that you were basically the odds-on favorite for Summit Point next week.
I don't know. There's a couple people that there's home track, so they might have the better advantage than I.
All right. Well, congratulations, Megan.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
All right.
That was Megan Overstreet there, and we've been asking these drivers all sorts of things. We've been asking them how their race is, so just asking their opinions about the race. I need to ask you, Charles, how was the race tonight?
I mean, anytime you get a race like this, and it comes, you kind of have expectations, and I think expectations were exceeded. I think it was a fantastic race. I love the strategies being played out. Obviously, it had we not had the little incident with Kramer and Justice early, that might have been 6 cars going down that stretch. To get onto the oval, trying to figure out who's going to be in third, getting ready for that run, which would have made it even more fun. But fantastic racing. Obviously, we got some new blood in the MX5s with Rollin and then Huffman. Obviously, another great night for him. Didn't get the wins, but P2 both nights, and so. Looking forward to next week at Summit Point, and we'll see what these drivers have in store for us.
I think flashing forward a little bit into some of the other, the sister series, really, you can say, to the Ray Esports Racing League. The Spec Racer Ford and the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors coming up this upcoming weekend at Oran Park. Could you give the viewers a little bit of a sneak peek to see what's coming with those races this weekend?
Well, obviously, Oran Park, is on the service. It's not my favorite track, just to be fair. However, the layout is pretty conducive to the smaller cars. So, with the Formula 4s and then the Spec Racers with the back-to-back and double headers, like we like to call it, you're going to see, these cars that we just watched, and you're going to see about 45 to 50 of them on that little tiny track, and so that makes for some fantastic racing. The Formula 4s are going to be, normally 30 cars. So double the official race with double the length because they're 40-minute races. So you get pit stop strategy involved in that. It just adds to the level of excitement. So obviously, it's I love doing the races on the weekend with my buddy Tim Cox and Josh running the board for us. So looking forward to it. It's going to be some fantastic racing this weekend.
And it's also going to be a little bit of a sneak peek to see what we have coming up next week for the Ray Esports Racing League. So I think that'll be a good series to tune in for anyone looking at some of the racing action here on Apex Racing TV. Speaking of, we've got great action for you around the clock here on Apex. An absolutely packed schedule this week as well. Tomorrow we've got sports car racing action from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. Wednesday night at 9:10 p.m. Eastern. That'll be a good race that all three of us, myself, Charles, and Josh, will be covering there at the high banks of Daytona. That's going to be a pretty good race there. And then on Thursday we have some awesome MX5 action, so if you're in the mood for some more MX5 action that we saw from the first race earlier, you can tune into the BRSCC Winter Tour race as well as the ARL Prototype Championship around the same time. That'll be on Thursday. Those are some great series. Had the privilege to commentate the BRSCC Winter Tour earlier this season, cover their first 3 races of the year at Silverstone, so I can imagine they're going to put on a pretty damn good show here in a few days' time. And then on Friday, we have Super Friday, or Fantastic Friday, I think we'll call it. We'll reserve the term Super for Super Sunday, which we'll touch on in a few moments' time. We have Fantastic Friday here on Apex Racing TV, the ARL GT3 Trophy, which can't really hold a candle to the action that we expect from the Radical Esports Cup on the same day. And to round off the Friday, we also have the late Apex broadcast here on Apex. So if you'd like to tune into that to hear about the world of sim racing, you can tune into that as well as the Inside the SCCA podcast, which also comes out on Friday. We mentioned them a little bit earlier. And of course, the Weekend Warriors broadcast here on Apex Racing TV for our Super Sunday coverage. Those will be some pretty good races there at Oran Park. As for tonight's broadcast, I believe that's all we have time for. Another great racing night of racing, if I can spit my words out here. Another great night of racing has already passed us by tonight, but that's not the end of the action from this series. Our thanks as always go out to Sim Motion, Grassroots Motorsports, and the Inside the SCCA podcast, the proud partners of this series. Without them, these broadcasts and this series would not be possible. My thanks as always go out to Stevie Ray for all the hard work he does behind the scenes to make this series happen, the racers on track, and they're the racers watching us here on Apex Racing TV as well. We will see you all at the virtual Summit Point Raceway in West Virginia, where the Spec Racer Fords and the Formula Cars will be doing battle at the mecca of Mid-Atlantic sports car racing. So I think that'll just about do it here for tonight's race. For myself, Ron Mons, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler. I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all in 1 week's time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.